UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber. UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber.
Surf Excel Hygienic Clean කොරෝනා වෛරසය 99.9ක් විනාශ කරනවා. හොඳ වැඩවලට ඊට කොරෝනා වලට තිත.
Tonight, out of the frying pan. With the CEB and the CPC at loggerheads on fuel supplies, Energy Minister says there could be bigger problems ahead.
That's why I warn there is a risk of having a fuel shortage in the near future, but I can't say the exact date.
Time for a change. Economic expert calls for a ditching of dream policies and a more rational approach to the debt crisis.
We have about 1.4 million working in public sector. All the time we are increasing their salaries without even at least one quest to improve their productivity.
Take care. Experts warn Sri Lankans to take malaria meds before travelling to Africa and India.
Last year, we detected 26 cases. 25 cases were from returnees from African countries.
All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Sunday, the 16th of January 2022.
නවලක්ස් විටමින් E සමගින් සඳමෙන් දිතුලන මුහුණක්.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammik Ekanaik. Now then, Minister of Energy Uday Gammanpila offered a grim warning today that Sri Lanka could expect a possible fuel shortage in the near future. The Energy Minister added that unless the Ceylon Electricity Board lets the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation know in advance of their fuel requirements and also provide them with the necessary dollars, it won't be getting fuel supplies at all. Nevertheless, the minister reassured that all measures will be taken to ensure that the country does not experience a fuel shortage.
One of the three 300 megawatt generators at the Norachole power plant is still not up and running. The 300 megawatt deficit created as a result was filled by the Kalnitissa diesel power plant. Then, on the 13th of January, it ran out of diesel. Power cuts were inevitable. Needing fuel, the Ceylon Electricity Board made a last-minute request from the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation for fuel. But the Electricity Board has a gargantuan outstanding debt to the CPC to the tune of 91 billion rupees. What's more, the CPC was not prepared for a fuel request from the Electricity Board until towards the end of the month. The Electricity Board wants the CPC to give them 1,500 metric tons of diesel per day, which the CPC is finding difficult.
3 months ago, we informed the CEB that we are burdened with finding foreign currency for our requirements. Therefore, we are not in a position to. Not only to the CEB, we gave the same message to the Sri Lankan airline as well. The message was that we are not in a position to find foreign currency required to import fuel requirement of those institutes. If they find dollars, we will import the petroleum products that they need. They agreed to do so. And earlier they said, look, we are not earning dollars. Then we responded saying that we are not also earning dollars. So in the end, they agreed to provide dollars to import products. We need 3,500 metric tons of furnace oil for power generation. We agreed to supply until 22nd of this month. And again, they inform us that they need 1,500 metric tons of diesel for a day. We are not in a position to do that. If we do that, then we will not be able to meet the requirement of industrial and transport sectors. So we advise them to place the order well in advance, and we can import diesel and furnace oil to meet their requirement. Unfortunately, they gave us very short notice, so we are not in a position to support them at this moment. We need some time. As a favor, we just provided 3,000 metric tons of diesel. They said it may meet only 2 to 3 day requirement of the CEB.
If the situation isn't resolved, there is no alternative but to move for power cuts. But that's just one problem. The Energy Minister is also saying that meeting the daily requirement of fuel is becoming more and more challenging.
We need need around 400 million to meet the fuel requirement of both industries as well as transportation sector, except the electricity sector. Right now, we have sufficient stock that we maintain to meet the requirement, but day by day, situation is getting worse and finding required foreign currency for importation of the petroleum products are getting challenging and very difficult at the moment. That's why I warn there is a risk of having a fuel shortage in the near future, but I can't say the exact date. But we are not going to just sit on a chair and let that happen. We take every single possible step to avoid such a crisis, but finding $400 million on monthly basis is a huge task. So I'm worried whether we may not be able to bring the fuel on time.
In the meantime, Minister of Power Gamini Lokuge is confident that there won't be a need for power cuts until Tuesday. Speaking today, he noted that scheduled power cuts will not be needed for now as the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation has supplied 3,000 metric tons of fuel to the Ceylon Electricity Board, which he says is sufficient for an uninterrupted power supply until Tuesday. He also expressed hopes of having further talks with the CPC tomorrow to request more fuel, which will be enough to generate power until next Saturday.
නියම ක්වලිටියට හැදෙන අලුත් ටියාරා රස පදමට අලුත් වෙලා.
Professor H.D. Karunaratne of the University of Colombo notes that it is high time for Sri Lanka to scrap its dependency on what he termed dream policies and switch to a more rational approach to solve its debt problems. Professor Karunaratne also warned that continuing to shoulder burdens such as the country's public sector losses sends the wrong message and picture to the bilateral lenders and other international lending agencies.
Speaking during a panel discussion organised by the Friedrich Neumann Institute on the country's debt issues yesterday, Professor H.D. Karunaratne of the University of Colombo dropped some hard truths on the state of Sri Lanka's economic management. He stated that it's about time for Sri Lanka to wake up from its dream policies and work towards reaching a political consensus on foreign direct investments.
We know that particularly since 1978, Sri Lanka gradually faced the trade deficit and balance of payment problem, and now it is converted to debt problem. So every year about 3 to 4 billion US dollars we had to borrow from various countries and donor agencies. So the accumulated debt stock is very large today. The issue in Sri Lanka, we have dreams, but we are not working practically to achieve those dreams. So I think we have to come out from the dream policies, because majority of Sri Lankans believe that the foreign investment will resolve all the problems in the country. But the issue is that to what extent political parties agreed to go for a kind of foreign direct investment. Are we ready to give our lands? Are we ready to invite foreigners to use our resources? I don't think the political parties have agreement. Any party coming, opposition party is opposing. So the foreign investment normal pattern doesn't work in Sri Lankan context. One can say that if we take the finance minister or the government, we will do this. But the issue, are we going for further loans? Are we going for dream foreign investment without changing any policy and assuring that our resources will govern by ourselves? There are a lot of issues.
Professor Karunaratne also highlighted the country's public sector as the perfect example of the country's long history of irrational economic activity.
Sri Lanka is well famous among the developing countries also by saying that Ceylon has eaten the fruit before the cultivation. So always we go for easy policies without sacrificing anything from our side. You know, particularly public sector organizations where we have about 1.4 million working in public sector. All the time we are increasing their salaries without even at least one request to improve their productivity. And there are a large number of loss-making institutions. So keeping these loss-making institutions, we are trying to get the loans from other countries. So how do we run this as a rational economy? Because our economic activities are irrational.
Now then, Sri Lanka is detecting malaria among people returning from the African region and India. With fever being a common symptom for both COVID and malaria, the Health Ministry's anti-malaria campaign is urging people to be transparent with their travel history. What's more, doctors too are encouraged to refer patients who fit the malaria criteria to the anti-malaria campaign, as they're the only entity with the necessary drugs to treat the parasitic disease.
The last indigenous case of malaria was reported in Sri Lanka 10 years ago, back in 2012. And in recent times, there had been speculation in media of it raising its head once more in a backdrop where the World Health Organization certifying in 2016 that the island has in fact eradicated malaria. Only 40 countries and territories in the world can boast being free of malaria. Apart from Sri Lanka, only the Maldives is on the list from Southeast Asia. Sri Lanka may have eradicated malaria, but there are many other countries in the world, some of which are frequently visited by a number of Sri Lankans, which haven't done so. In 2019 alone, 53 cases were detected in the island. However, around 25 of them were from Indian returnees, while 24 were from returnees from the African region. In 2020, from 30 cases of malaria detected in the island, 24 had been among returnees from Africa. It's obvious that there's a clear pattern emerging here.
Last year, we detected 26 cases. 25 cases were from returnees from African countries. This year, so far, we have detected 5 cases, 2 from Jaffna district and 1 from Colombo, Gampaha and Gaul. We have eliminated the malaria, but the mosquito transmitted malaria is common in almost all districts in Sri Lanka. Therefore, if a person returns from malaria endemic country, especially African countries, whenever they get fever, they should seek medical treatment. And you must inform the doctor that you have returned from malaria endemic country.
With Sri Lanka having the prestigious status of being malaria free, tourists don't think twice about visiting the island. In that context, just as the people are responsible for keeping the country malaria-free without jeopardizing the gains made over decades, the acting chief of the island's malaria campaign has a message for all doctors as well.
Whenever a patient came with fever, they should ask from the patient whether there's a travel history to malaria endemic country within the period of 1 year. If that fever and overseas travel history both are present, then definitely the patient should be tested for malaria. They should inform our campaign. Our hotline is 011 726 262. When the patients are diagnosed with malaria, malaria drugs are available only with our campaign, not in the other hospitals. You can't buy anti-malaria drugs from pharmacies. Once informed, we take the responsibility of the patient. Normally, we estimate that about 10 to 15% of the patients diagnosed with malaria need intravenous treatment drugs. These are very expensive. But unfortunately, when the diagnosis is delayed, the percentage of patients need IV drugs is more. Out of these 5 cases reported in this year, we had to use intravenous drugs for 4 patients.
All in all, it is in the best interest of the individual and the community to ensure that one does not contract and spread the malaria parasite.
Anybody who's traveled to malaria endemic countries, any African country, then India, Pakistan, they should take drugs to prevent malaria, what we call the prophylactic drugs. These are available with our campaign and our regional centers. You have to start taking these drugs 1 week before your travel and continue weekly until you stay in these countries and continue the 6 weeks after return to Sri Lanka.
We will see you shortly. Bear with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa told a gathering of estate workers aligned to the National Union of Workers today that they should look no further than him as president to ensure and uphold their rights. Premadasa also pledged to use the SJB's special ties with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to work towards a better future for estate workers.
The official Thai Pongal celebrations of the National Union of Workers was worked off at the Municipal Council grounds in Norelia today, with the participation of opposition leader Sajith Premadasa. Also present at the ceremony was Indian High Commissioner in Sri Lanka, Gopal Bagle. Addressing the gathering, the opposition leader called on the estate worker community to not look elsewhere for someone to stand up for their rights, as he is prepared to take on the responsibility himself.
තමුන්නාන්සලා සදාකාලික කම්කරු භාවයේ පවත්වන්නේ නැතුව කුඩා තේවතු ඉඩම් හිමි භාවයට පත් කරන ඒ දෙවෙනි සටන ජයග්‍රහණය කරවන්නට රණසිංහ ප්‍රේමදාසගේ පුතා සජිත් ප්‍රේමදාස ලෑස්ති කියන එක මේ අවස්ථාවේ ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා. සමගි ජන බලවේගයේ වෙනමම වතු කම්කරු ප්‍රජාවගේ සංවර්ධනයේ උදෙසා දියුණු උදෙසා මේ රටේ ජනාධිපතිවරයා හැටියට වතු කම්කරු සංවර්ධනය වෙනුවෙන් ජනාධිපති කාර්ය සාධක බලකායක් එය ස්ථාපනය කරන්නට මම කටයුතු කරනවායි කියන එක මේ අවස්ථාවේ ඔබ සියලු දෙනාට ප්‍රකාශ කර සිටිනවා. ඉන්දියානු ගරු අග්‍රාමාත්‍ය ශ්‍රී නරේන්ද්‍ර මෝඩි මැතිතුමත් සමග අපිට විශේෂ සම්බන්ධතාවයක් තිබෙනවා. ඒ විශේෂ සම්බන්ධතාවය ශක්තිමත් කරගෙන වතු කම්කරු ජනතාවගේ අයිතින් සුරක්ෂා කිරීමේ ගමන අපි ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්නට ඉන්දියාවත් සමග ඉතාමත්ම සහයෝගයෙන් කටයුතු කරනවා. වතු කම්කරු ජනතාවගේ අනාගත වගකීම වෙන කවුරුත් අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. මම බාර ගන්නවා කියමින් ඔබ සියලු දෙනාටම සුබ තයිපොංගල් දවසක්.
Now, Dulanga Sampath became the champion of Derana Dream Star Season 10 last evening. Dulanga Sampath, along with Anjali Metsara and Rajitha Bhanuka, battled it out for the coveted title, where the ultimate champion was decided through SMS votes of the viewers.
Derana Dream Star, Sri Lanka's biggest reality show, was held for the 10th consecutive year. The show provides a platform for young adults to pursue their careers of their dreams in the world of entertainment. Of the thousands of contestants trying out for the competition, only 48 were selected by a panel of judges, of which 3 talented participants made their way to the finals. The grand finale was held at the Nelumpokuna Mahinda Rajapaksha Theatre last evening in accordance with the health and safety guidelines. The finalists for the Derana Dream Star Season 10 were Anjali Metsara, Dulanga Sampath and Rajitha Bhanuka. The finalists were selected through SMS votes and through votes cast via the Dflix mobile app. After the final count, the votes placed Rajitha Bhanuka as a second runner-up. However, in the end, Dulanga Sampath claimed the title of champion in Derana Dream Star's grand finale, claiming the prize of a house worth 25 million rupees along with other prizes.
Consumer prices in the United States in December continued to rise, with the index growing 7% year on year, which is a record high in almost 40 years. The US Dollar or Labor Department reported earlier this week that this could push the Federal Reserve to raise interest sooner than planned. The US Consumer Price Index last month rose 0.5% from the previous month and 7% from a year earlier, the highest 12-month rise since June 1982, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Shelter cost and second-hand vehicle prices are major components of the inflation increase during the COVID-19 pandemic. Used vehicle prices, due to supply chain constraints that have limited new vehicle production, rose another 3.5% in December, bringing the increase from a year ago to 37.3%. The core consumer price index, which excludes food and energy, rose 5.5% over the last 12 months, up from 4.9% over the 12 months ending November. The energy index rose 29.3% over the last year, and the food index increased 6.3%. New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says that there has been no official reports of deaths or injuries in Tonga following yesterday's tsunami. An underwater volcano erupted without warning 65 kilometers from the island, which led to the tsunami.
An underwater volcano off Tonga erupted yesterday, triggering tsunami warnings and evacuation orders on the shores of Tonga, as well as several other Pacific islands. The footage on social media showed waves crashing into coastal homes. Internet and phone lines went down at about 6:40 p.m. local time yesterday, leaving the 105,000 residents on the island virtually uncontactable. Commenting on the developments today, New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said that there were no official reports of injuries or deaths in Tonga as yet. She did, however, say that communication with Tonga is a concern.
The main undersea communications cable has been impacted, likely due to the loss of power, and that is why communications have been limited. Official damage assessments are not yet available. However, our High Commission in Tonga advised the tsunami has had a significant impact on the foreshore on the northern side of Nuku'alofa, with boats and large boulders washed ashore. Shops along the coast have been damaged and a significant cleanup will be needed. The Government of Tonga has accepted an initial offer of assistance from New Zealand of an NZDF surveillance flight. A New Zealand Defence Force P3 Orion is ready to deploy tomorrow morning, subject to conditions including ash fall. At present, it is not safe or viable to begin this reconnaissance. This morning, the top of the ash clouds were estimated to be 63,000 feet higher than an RNZA aircraft can fly.
Meanwhile, the shores of several Peruvian cities were flooded with seawaters following yesterday's tsunami. Images broadcasted on local television showed people walking with water up to their knees in the city of Pisco in southern Peru. Vehicles were also trapped in the flooded streets. Despite many coastal towns such as Barranca and Paracas evacuated bathers from the beaches as a safety precaution, the Peruvian Tsunami Warning Center has said that the event did not generate a tsunami on the Peruvian coast. The volcanic eruption which triggered the tsunami sent fumes of smoke into the air about 12 miles above the sea level. The eruptions triggered tsunami warnings across the Pacific, with the United States and Japan urging people on their Pacific coastlines to stay away from the shores. Australia also issued a maritime tsunami warning for the New South Wales coastlines.
Now then, Novak Djokovic visa saga has finally come to an end today after an Australian court upheld the government's decision to cancel his visa for a second time. The government's argument had been that having Djokovic, who is unvaccinated in the country, would whip up anti-vaccination sentiment. The Australian Prime Minister was more than happy with the decision, saying it'll help Australians safe. An Australian court upheld a government decision to cancel Novak Djokovic's visa today, ending the unvaccinated tennis superstar's hopes of winning the Australian Open and racking up a record-breaking 21 men's Grand Slam titles. Ruling on the case that has gripped Australia and the sporting world for more than a week, a three-judge bench of the federal court heard government lawyers' arguments that Djokovic's continued presence risked whipping up anti-vaccination sentiment during Australia's worst outbreak of COVID-19 since the pandemic began. A medical exemption that allowed the Serbian tennis world number one to enter the country without being vaccinated had sparked fury in Australia and become a political issue for Prime Minister Scott Morrison, who has to call a federal election before May. Meanwhile, Melbourne residents were divided on the decision to cancel Djokovic's visa, with some saying it was a fair decision and supporters blaming politics. Supporters of the tennis star gathered by the federal court building in Melbourne as well as by the offices of Djokovic's legal team. Some were draped in Serbian flags and listening in to the court hearing. Djokovic was first detained by immigration authorities on the 6th of January before being ordered to be released on a court order on the 10th. Then he was detained once more yesterday. In a statement, Djokovic said he was extremely disappointed with the ruling as it meant he could not take part in the Australian Open, which starts tomorrow. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, meanwhile, welcomed the court ruling, which upheld Djokovic's visa cancellation, saying the decision will help keep our borders strong and keep Australians safe. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.